Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It happened just minutes after I stepped through the front door, suitcase still in my hand, the smell of jet fuel clinging to my coat. The leaves crunched behind me as I closed the door of our beige colonial home, a gust of crisp Connecticut air following me inside. 2 months on the road, Dallas, Denver, Seattle. I was tired, but I was smiling. Home at last. Lauren, I called, my voice warm. I missed you, babe. I didn't even get her name out a second time before I saw her. She came down the stairs like a storm. Messy bun, sweatshirt sleeves pushed up, jaw tight. I opened my arms with a grin, expecting a tearful hug. Instead, she slapped me. Hard. The sound cracked through the hallway. My suitcase toppled to the floor. What the hell? I gasped, blinking, hand to my face. You think you're clever, don't you? She hissed, arms crossed like she'd rehearsed this moment for weeks. Disappearing for 2 months and thinking you can just waltz in here with your honey. I'm home act? Lauren, what are you talking about? Save it, she snapped. 2 months, Mark. 8 weeks. I could have dropped dead and you wouldn't have noticed. I called you every night. Yeah, and always from a different city. At midnight. For 10 minutes. That's not a husband. That's a guy checking in from his second life. I stared at her, stunned. Second life? Are you serious? You tell me, she shouted, stepping closer. Because if you think a few sad texts and a missed anniversary mean you still get to play husband, you're wrong. Lauren, I started, raising my palms. You know I didn't have a choice. It was a rollout. Boston canceled last minute. I got rerouted across 4 states. And you didn't once think to ask how I was doing, she cut in. You think I'm just here to water the plants and keep your laundry folded while you gallop across the country pretending you're some big shot? That's not fair, I said quietly now. She scoffed. Fair left this marriage a long time ago. Then she turned, storming toward the bedroom, and slamming the door so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. I just stood there, frozen in the middle of our hallway, blinking like I'd walked into someone else's life. That's when I realized something wasn't right. This wasn't just about my travel. It wasn't even about us. The venom in her voice, it felt like she wasn't talking to me. Not entirely. And the worst part? I had no clue what had really just happened. The next evening, I tried to fix things the only way I knew how, quietly, deliberately, with intention. It was already dark by the time I got everything in place. I'd dusted off the old tablecloth we got on our trip to Maine, lit 2 tapered candles, set the good plates out. The pasta was still warm, her favorite, linguine with lemon, garlic, and grilled shrimp. A bottle of Pinot sat breathing next to a modest bouquet of yellow tulips. I even dimmed the lights. The soft glow of the chandelier spilled over the table like something out of a Hallmark movie. She used to love these small gestures. I heard her heels before I saw her, soft clicks across the hardwood. Then she stepped into the dining room, arms folded tight, eyes scanning the scene like a detective at a crime scene. She didn't smile, didn't blink. Seriously, I stood from my seat. I thought maybe we could sit down. Talk. Just us. She shook her head slowly, letting out a dry laugh. So this is what 2 months buys me. Wine and tulips? They're your favorite. Were, she snapped. They were my favorite. Before everything started feeling fake. I took a careful step toward her. Lauren, I know yesterday was, don't, she said sharply, holding up a hand. Don't start with your calm voice. You always do this. You disappear, then you show back up like some actor with props and expect me to applaud. I'm not acting. I'm trying. Her eyes met mine for the first time that day, and there was no warmth behind them. You think candles erase the silence? You think pasta covers for the fact that I spent every night wondering if you were with someone else? That hit me like a gut punch. What? Lauren, come on. You think I'm crazy, don't you? She said, voice rising. That I'm just emotional, or bored, or dramatic because I miss my husband who's working late again. Where is this coming from? I asked. I've always been honest with you. I haven't done anything. You haven't been here, she cut in. And that's enough. I didn't know what to say. I'd prepared for distance, maybe even anger. But this bitterness, it was like talking to a stranger wearing my wife's face. Just sit, I said finally, gesturing to her seat. Please. I didn't come back to fight. She didn't move. Instead, she glanced down at the plate I'd prepared for her, untouched and perfectly arranged. Then she stepped back. You always think food fixes things, she muttered. But I'm not that easy, Mark. I'm not some mess you can clean up with a napkin and a sorry smile. She turned and walked out of the room, her voice floating behind her like smoke. I lost track of how many nights I ate alone. I stood there for a while, maybe a full minute, just breathing. The candles flickered. Somewhere upstairs, the heater kicked on. I sat down slowly, picked up my fork, and tried to take a bite. But everything tasted cold. It was 3 days later, early morning, when I stumbled across it. I was in the bathroom, groggy, brushing my teeth after a long jog through the neighborhood. The air outside still smelled like October, burnt leaves and wood smoke. But inside our house, it was cold in a different way. We hadn't spoken much since the dinner. Just exchanged a few flat sentences about groceries, laundry, work schedules. Our conversations had turned into weather reports. Dry, mostly cloudy, slight chance of storms. I reached under the sink for the backup toothpaste, and that's when I saw it, wedged behind a pack of cotton rounds and an expired bottle of cough syrup. A pregnancy test. Positive. I just stood there staring at it for a moment. The little plus sign was sharp, unmissable. The cap was still half attached, like someone had stuffed it back in a hurry. It looked fresh. Too fresh. I held it in my hand, slowly turning it over like it might offer me a different answer. My chest tightened. I hadn't touched my wife in months. I found her in the kitchen 15 minutes later, sipping coffee and scrolling on her phone like it was any other Tuesday. "Lauren," I said quietly. She didn't look up. "Yeah." I held it up. No words. Just the test in my hand. She froze. The silence between us stretched out like a sheet of glass. Her eyes flicked up to the stick, then to my face, then back again. "Oh," she said, her voice thin. That's not mine." I didn't move. "No?" She cleared her throat, setting the mug down with a small clink. "It's Emily's," she said quickly. She asked me to hold on to it. Said she didn't want her husband finding it before she could tell him. "COVID test. You know how those things look now." I looked at her. Really looked. "COVID test." She nodded. "Too fast." "Lauren, this has a plus sign. You think I don't know what a pregnancy test looks like?" "Well, some brands, they're weird now," she stammered. "You'd be surprised. I swear. She just dropped it off when we were out last week." "Out where?" She blinked. "Target." I said nothing. Just tilted my head slightly. "And she took it with her to Target?" She had it in her bag. We stopped in the bathroom. She didn't want to carry it home. She panicked. I watched her fumble the words like she was trying to piece together a puzzle midair. Her voice was a little too shaky. Her hands a little too still. But her eyes, they locked onto mine with this desperate, almost believable innocence. Still, something inside me wouldn't sit right. "You're sure?" "I wouldn't lie to you about something like that," she said softly. And that was the first time I truly noticed the shift. Because her lie wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even cruel. It was careful, practiced, intentional. I nodded slowly, slipping the test into a plastic bag and setting it on the counter. "All right," I said. "If it's Emily's, maybe call her. Let her know it's still here." She gave a tight smile. "I will." Then she turned back to her phone, and I just stood there a second longer, the knot in my gut pulling tighter. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. But some part of me, some deeper, quieter part, had already started preparing for a different truth. That night, the house was wrapped in silence again. She had taken a long shower, one of those steamy, slow ones where she locked the door and let the water run for what felt like forever. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in jeans and a t-shirt, scrolling aimlessly through news stories I didn't care about, pretending not to listen for the click of the door opening. When it did, I glanced up, just enough to notice the soft light behind her. Lauren stood there in the doorway, wrapped in a short silk robe. Her damp hair clung to her shoulders. Her makeup was gone, and for a second, she looked like the woman I used to know. She leaned against the frame with one hip and gave a soft, tired smile. "You coming to bed?" I nodded slowly, setting my phone on the nightstand. "Yeah, in a sec." She stepped inside, walking barefoot across the carpet, and I felt the shift instantly. Her energy was different. Not tired, not irritated, calculated. She sat beside me, close enough for our knees to touch. "You okay?" she asked, voice low. I looked at her, unsure what game we were playing now. "Yeah, just tired." Her hand found my forearm. Light, gentle. "You've been distant." "I just got back," I said. "I'm jet-lagged, Lauren. I'm not talking about the trip." She leaned in, brushing her lips near my jaw. "I'm talking about us." I pulled back subtly, enough that she noticed. She blinked, her smile faltering. What's wrong? Nothing, I said softly. I'm just exhausted. I don't have the energy tonight. She laughed once, dry and sharp. Right? Of course. I turned toward her. It's not personal. But it always is, isn't it? She said quickly. You haven't touched me in months, Mark. I was on the road. You were gone long before the flights. She snapped, standing up. You've been somewhere else since spring. I feel like I'm married to a ghost. That's not fair. Oh, but you pulling away like I've got a disease is fair. I didn't say that. She stepped back toward me, eyes flashing. Then say what you mean. You don't want me anymore, is that it? I stared at her, watching the cracks form in her voice, watching her reach for control, and hate that she couldn't find it. You're making this into something it's not? I said evenly. No, I'm finally calling it what it is. Her robe slipped slightly at the shoulder, but she didn't adjust it. You don't touch me. You barely look at me. And now you've got that, I'm just tired excuse like we're roommates with matching towels. I didn't answer. Because I couldn't lie. Because the truth sat heavy in my chest. Because something in me had shifted ever since I saw that test. And even before then, if I was being honest. Something was off. Something I couldn't name, but couldn't ignore anymore. I'm sorry, I said finally. I just need sleep. Her mouth opened like she wanted to scream, but no sound came. Instead, she scoffed, low and bitter, and grabbed a pillow from the bed. Fine, she muttered. Sleep alone. She stormed out of the room. And the door didn't slam this time. It clicked softly shut. That made it worse. I lay back on the bed, fully dressed, staring up at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly, and all I could think about was how quiet the house had become, but not in a peaceful way. In a way that made me feel like something was ending. And neither of us wanted to admit it. The next afternoon, the wind had picked up, scattering red and gold leaves down our street, like confetti nobody asked for. I was halfway through mowing the lawn when I saw the mail truck pull away from the curb. Just the usual stuff, I figured, bills, local flyers, and junk. But there it was. A white envelope tucked near the bottom of the stack. Clean, official looking. Hartford Medical Group. Lauren's name in crisp type across the front. I stood in the driveway for a second, my gloved hand tightening around the envelope. She hadn't mentioned a doctor visit. No fever. No cough. No sprained ankle. I turned it over. Sealed tight. But something about it buzzed in my hands like static. Inside, something was waiting. Not junk. Not a catalog. Something real. I looked toward the house. Quiet. No sign of her near the window. Back in the garage, I slipped out my phone and gently tore the envelope open along the top seam. Surgical, almost. I pulled the paper out slowly, my heart ticking faster with every word I read. Confirmation of pregnancy. 5 weeks, 2 days. Patient advised to begin prenatal care within the next 2 weeks. Dr. Elaine Broder, OB-GYN. I blinked. Read it again. 5 weeks. I was in Arizona 5 weeks ago. I was in a hotel conference room watching product slides on a mounted screen while eating vending machine almonds. 5 weeks ago, I was trying to stay awake on a Zoom call while the AC rattled above me. I took a photo of the letter, every inch of it. Then I slid it carefully back into the envelope, resealed it with a dot of glue from the drawer in the tool bench, and tucked it back into the mailbox like it had never moved. But it had moved. Everything had. I didn't say anything right away. I don't know what I needed. Proof, maybe. Something that made it all make sense, even though it never would. So I went with her. That was the plan she mentioned casually over breakfast. Said she had a follow-up appointment, routine checkup. Asked if I wanted to come. I said yes before I thought too much about it. The waiting room smelled like plastic and lemon cleaner. She sat beside me flipping through a baby magazine like it was just another Tuesday. The nurse finally called her name, and we followed her back into a small exam room with dim lights and soft nature sounds piped through the speakers. The doctor came in, short, professional, with half-moon glasses and a soft smile. Mark, right? She said warmly, shaking my hand. Glad you could join us today. I gave a stiff nod. Yeah, thanks. Dr. Broder pulled out a tablet and tapped through a few screens. Well, congratulations, she said brightly. Lauren's test results look great. You're just over 5 weeks. Everything's developing right on track. Nothing to worry about at this stage. I didn't respond. 5 weeks. Lauren didn't look at me. She kept smiling politely, nodding along like everything was fine. Do you two have any questions? The doctor asked. I swallowed hard. Just one, I said, turning to Lauren. She blinked, but I didn't press. Not there. Not in front of the doctor. There was nothing she could say in that moment that wouldn't tip her hand or mine. After the appointment, on the walk back to the car, she kept a step ahead of me. You've been quiet, she said, glancing over her shoulder. Long day. She didn't push. She never did when she knew she was standing on a fault line. I opened her car door, let her slide in, then closed it gently. As I walked around to the driver's side, the echo of the doctor's words played in my mind like a looping tape I couldn't mute. 5 weeks. I was a ghost during that window. A time-stamped shadow in 5 different airports. And yet here we were. And Lauren? She was glowing. That's when everything inside me clicked into place, not with fury, not even sadness. Just a cold, low certainty. It wasn't mine. And now, I had the proof. 2 mornings later, I parked outside a brick building on Main Street, downtown Hartford. The law offices of Wallace and Drexler were tucked between a dental clinic and an old bookstore with dusty windows. A brass plaque on the glass door read Family Law. Nothing more. It was raining lightly, a gray drizzle that matched the weight in my chest. Inside, the receptionist barely looked up. Mark Emerson? I nodded. Mr. Drexler will be with you in just a moment. I sat down in a stiff leather chair and looked around at the office. Tasteful, sterile, quiet. The kind of place that saw a lot of endings disguised as new beginnings. On the coffee table was a neat stack of magazines and a small ceramic bowl of peppermints. The door beside me opened, and a short, silver-haired man stepped out in a tailored navy suit. He had the look of someone who had spent his entire adult life reading court transcripts and never raising his voice. Mr. Emerson, he said, extending his hand. I'm David Drexler. Let's talk. His office smelled faintly of wood polish and paper. I sat across from him, still wearing my damp coat, the manila folder in my lap nearly bent from how hard I'd been gripping it. You mentioned something serious over the phone, he said gently, folding his hands. You said it was time-sensitive. I opened the folder and laid everything out like I was setting a trap. A printout of the OB letter with the dates circled. Photos of receipts, hotel stays, airfare, rideshare logs, from every week leading up to that 5-week mark. I even included screenshots from my company's travel app showing timestamps, GPS check-ins, and flight itineraries. I've been gone for over 2 months, I said quietly, and my wife is 5 weeks pregnant. Mr. Drexler didn't flinch. He just nodded, studying the paperwork with the calm detachment of a surgeon examining a broken limb. And she's claiming the child is yours? She hasn't said anything yet, but I know what's coming. He reached for his pen and began jotting notes on a legal pad. Well, he said finally, you've done your homework. And this, he tapped the stack, this is strong. It's clean too. Timestamps, receipts, documented location tracking. You were nowhere near her during the window of conception. So, he continued, if she tries to put your name on the birth certificate or push for spousal benefits based on this child, you'll have grounds to challenge it. Paternity fraud is difficult to prove emotionally, but legally, with this documentation, it's airtight. I swallowed hard. Would I need to take a test? I asked. He shook his head. Not unless you want to prove a negative after the fact. But if she tries to establish paternity at any point, you're protected. This packet, he held up the file, is your shield. The word hit differently. Shield. Because I didn't feel like a fighter. I felt like a man watching his house catch fire with both hands in his pockets. What do I do now? Nothing, he said calmly. Not yet. Keep this. Stay quiet. Don't accuse her, don't tip her off. Just document. Observe. And when she makes her move, we'll be ready. I stood slowly, feeling the ache in my knees, my back, my ribs, places I didn't even know held tension. It had settled there, slowly, like dust over the last few months. But now I felt something else settle too. A colder feeling. He didn't offer sympathy when I left, just a firm handshake and a quiet, you did the right thing. I stepped back into the rain and zipped my coat to the collar. It was still gray, still drizzling, but something in me had hardened. She could lie. She could spin stories. But I had the truth now. And this time, I wasn't going to look away. That evening, the kitchen felt strangely warm, like the room itself was trying too hard to feel normal. Lauren stood by the stove, humming to herself as she stirred something in a pot. Chicken chili, she said without looking at me. Your favorite, right? I nodded, setting my phone down on the counter. Smells good. She smiled faintly, then glanced at the timer. 10 more minutes. I stood across from her, unsure what part one was supposed to be playing in this sudden domestic calm. The woman who snapped at me days ago now moved with a strange softness, like nothing had ever cracked between us. She finally spoke again, lighter this time. So, I've been thinking. Yeah. She wiped her hands on a towel and leaned her hip against the counter. I'm ready. For a baby. I mean, finally ready. I kept my face still. You are. She nodded quickly. Yeah. I know we've talked about timing for years, and work, and stability and all that, but I think now's the time. She smiled, as if she were delivering great news. I want to start trying. Immediately. I leaned back against the island. That's sudden. She laughed, too casually. Is it though? I mean, we've been married 6 years. You're in a good place at work. I'm doing fine. It's not like we're getting any younger. I tilted my head. You really think now is the right time? Why not? I pretended to think. Well, for starters, we're barely speaking without fighting. You've been distant. I've been away. There's been tension, Lauren. Real tension. She crossed her arms, her smile evaporating. So now I'm not allowed to want a family? I didn't say that. You're dancing around it. Again, like always. I just think maybe we should slow down, I said gently. Figure things out before we bring a kid into it. Her voice raised half an octave. Unbelievable. You know what your problem is, Mark? You want control over everything. Timing, plans, how everyone feels. But when it comes time to actually step up, you back off. I said nothing. She took a step toward me. You act like you're so stable, so responsible. But the truth is, you're terrified. Of commitment. Of change. Of anything that isn't perfectly measured. I stayed calm. Too calm, maybe. Because I wasn't hearing panic over timing. I was hearing fear. I was watching her scramble to turn a lie into a future she thought I might accept. She wasn't trying to build a family. She was trying to make me believe we were still one. I'm not afraid, I said quietly. I just don't believe forcing something fixes what's broken. Her expression flickered. So that's it. You don't want kids with me? I want clarity with you, I replied. Before anything else. She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her. But I did. I knew exactly who I was now. And I knew why she was suddenly so eager to become a mother. Because she already was one. And she was praying I'd never put the math together. If you're still listening, please tap the like button on this video. A few days later, I found myself parked outside Brew and Barrel, our local coffee spot off Main, the one with the crooked sign and pumpkin spice everything in the fall. I was just coming out of the hardware store next door, coffee in hand, when something caught my eye across the street. There they were, Lauren and Eric Holloway. I hadn't seen him in months, Melissa's husband. The guy who always wore polo shirts tucked too neatly into his jeans, the kind of man who shook your hand like he was hiding something. They stood near the edge of the outdoor seating area, just off the sidewalk. Lauren's arms were folded tightly across her chest, but her shoulders were tense. Her voice was low, but her hands were doing all the talking. Gesturing, pointing, gripping her sweater sleeve like she was trying to keep it together. I sat in the driver's seat and watched from across the street. The engine idled softly beneath me, but I didn't move. Eric looked like a man unraveling. His body language was stiff, like he didn't want to be there. But he also couldn't leave. He rubbed his neck repeatedly, kept glancing over his shoulder like the world might catch him doing something wrong. Again. Lauren leaned in once, whispering something. I couldn't hear a word, but I didn't need to. Eric's face collapsed in on itself, mouth slack, eyes blinking too much, like someone had just reminded him that secrets don't stay buried for long. He tried to respond, even reached for her wrist once, but she pulled back like his touch burned. Whatever was happening, this wasn't the first time they'd talked, but it might have been the last. Because in that moment, I saw it, plain as day. Guilt. It sat on Eric like sweat on a guilty man's collar. He wasn't just nervous. He was drowning. Lauren pressed her fingers to her lips. Not like she was sad, but like she was scared. Then she walked away. Fast. Eric stood there a few seconds longer, hands on his hips, staring down at the pavement like it might forgive him. I didn't move. I didn't need to follow her. I didn't need to confront him. I already knew. The baby wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a fling. It was intentional. And now, I knew who the father was. I took a slow sip of my coffee and leaned back in the seat. No rage. No outburst. Just a calm that felt almost unnatural. The kind of calm that comes when you've gathered every piece of the puzzle and you're ready to flip the board. It was the kind of party where everyone brought a dish. The music was just a little too loud, and the fairy lights strung over the fence made everything feel warmer than it really was. Melissa and Josh hosted it every October. One of those neighborhood traditions you show up to even if you're barely talking to your spouse. There were kids bobbing for apples, men hovering near the grill, and women sipping wine by the fire pit pretending not to notice the rising tension between couples. Lauren had insisted we go. We should show our faces, she said that morning, too casually. People talk when we don't show up. And people would talk more, I thought, after tonight. I showed up in jeans and a button-down. Quiet. Steady. Not fake happy, just present. Lauren wore soft beige and a little too much blush. She smiled at everyone like she hadn't spent the last few weeks gaslighting her way through our marriage. Around 7 o'clock, she grabbed a glass of sparkling cider, too obvious, and walked to the center of the yard where the fire pit glowed low and the crowd naturally gathered. Josh had just finished slicing a pie. Conversations were winding down. Everyone was listening. She cleared her throat. Hi, everyone, she said brightly. Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to share something exciting. My fingers tightened around the envelope in my coat pocket. My heart didn't pound. It just waited. Lauren raised her glass and turned toward me with a practiced grin. Darling, she said, drawing it out for effect. You're going to be a father. The crowd gasped. She beamed like it was a movie moment. A few neighbors clapped politely. Someone whispered, finally. Melissa teared up instantly and let out a soft, oh my God, Lauren. That was my cue. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the envelope. Pale blue. Thick. Legal. I stepped forward, slow and sure, and handed it to her. She blinked. What's this? Divorce papers, I said simply. My voice didn't waver. Congratulations. The silence dropped like a hammer. Lauren's smile cracked. Melissa stood, panic rising. Wait, what is this? What are you doing? I didn't answer her. Instead, I turned slowly toward her, my gaze steady. Ask your husband, Melissa. That shut her up. Eric, standing 2 feet away with a beer in his hand, went pale. His grip slipped. The bottle nearly fell. All eyes turned to him. His lips moved before any words came. I didn't mean for. Melissa stepped toward him. What is he talking about? Eric's face flushed red. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. It wasn't supposed to. It was a mistake. A mistake. Melissa's voice shot up. Lauren was frozen, still clutching the envelope. I didn't know she'd keep it, Eric said, eyes darting around. It was just a few times, okay? I didn't think it meant anything. People started backing away, giving the whole scene space. You cheated on me? Melissa's voice cracked. With her. Eric tried to explain, but nothing he said could clean it up. It just happened. She said it wouldn't matter. She said she and Mark were basically done. Lauren looked like she wanted to disappear. Her mouth parted, but she said nothing. Not a word. I didn't flinch. I didn't shout. I just stood there, watching everything unravel. Justice doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it just watches as the truth catches fire and burns down everything that was built on lies. And that night, the match wasn't mine. They lit it themselves. The door clicked shut behind us, the sound strangely gentle for how loud everything had just been. Lauren walked in first, head down, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold in what little she had left. I stayed by the door, not moving. The silence in the house felt final, like it had been waiting to be acknowledged. She turned to face me, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Mark, please, can we just talk? I think everything's been said, I replied calmly. No, she said, stepping forward. Not like this. Not there. That was public. This is between us. I let out a slow breath. You mean now it's between us? After letting half the neighborhood find out before I could finish a sentence? She flinched. I didn't mean for it to happen that way. I looked at her, studied her face. She looked young all of a sudden, small, raw, scared. How did you mean for it to happen, Lauren? Because from where I stood, you planned the whole show. She opened her mouth, but her voice caught. Then she burst. It was a mistake, she cried. Okay, I made a mistake. I was alone, and you were gone for weeks, and I was angry, and Eric was just there. You were never alone, I said, sharply. You were married. She sobbed louder, dropping onto the edge of the couch. I didn't think. I thought we were already breaking. Then you should have said that before you started something with him. Not after. Not like this. I was scared. No, Lauren, I said, stepping closer, my voice low but firm. You were selfish. And immature. You made a decision that burned everything down and expected me to still carry the weight of it like a good husband. She looked up, eyes glassy. You don't understand. Waiting for you felt like waiting for someone who might never come back. I didn't know what you were thinking, or if you even cared. I swallowed hard. You know what I was doing? Working, providing, building a life. I missed every flight home just to make sure we were secure. And the whole time, you were finding your way into another man's arms. She reached for my hand, but I didn't move. Please, Mark. I still love you. I stared down at her fingers. They trembled. I don't think you understand what love is, I said. Because love doesn't hide pregnancy tests. It doesn't lie about timelines. And it sure as hell doesn't involve your best friend's husband. She broke completely then, folding in on herself, sobs racking through her shoulders. But I was done. I turned without another word and walked down the hallway toward the guest room, the same one I'd avoided since coming home. Behind me, the sound of crying faded into something quieter. Regret, maybe, or just realization. Either way, I didn't look back. The house had never been this quiet. But now, it didn't feel like silence. It felt like the end. It was one of those bright spring mornings in Connecticut, sky clear, air crisp, and the park buzzing with quiet life. Birds chirped from the treetops. A light breeze carried the smell of fresh grass and damp mulch. I was on my usual walk, earbuds in, coffee in hand, just passing through the trails that curved around the playground. Then I saw her. Lauren. She was sitting on a bench near the sandbox, hunched slightly over a stroller. Her hair was tied back in a loose, tired knot. She wore an oversized sweater, the kind she used to borrow from my side of the closet, only now it looked like it had been washed too many times, stretched and faded. She rocked the stroller gently with one hand. The other rested in her lap, motionless. She didn't see me at first, but when I stepped off the path, closer to the bench, she looked up. Our eyes met. No words. No gestures. Just two people who had once shared everything, and now shared nothing but history. She looked worn. Not just tired, but aged in a way that grief doesn't advertise. Like someone who had wrestled with consequences longer than she expected to. And in that instant, I saw everything I needed to see. I saw the weight she carried now. The silence between us wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. It was full of all the things that didn't need saying anymore. I gave her a single nod, barely there, and turned to keep walking. No confrontation. No closure speech. Just a quiet step forward. Some things don't need to be spoken to be understood. And some endings don't come with fireworks. They come with stillness. With peace. And I had finally found mine. And that was the end of my story. I still think about Eric sometimes. How he stood there, sweating in front of everyone, and chose to tell the truth instead of hiding behind another lie. Did he do the right thing? Or was it just too late? Let me know in the comments. And if this story hit you somewhere deep, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's more to come.